In this tutorial, we'll talk a little bit about windows and adding glazing to your building. So before we get started, let's just look quickly at what a window family actually is. So if you go to Open, Family, and then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom to my windows, you can really select any of them, but I'm going to look at a double hung. Let's look at double hung with trim and hit Open. Okay, so all families are essentially made up of the same components. There are a series of reference planes and then 3D solids. So in this case, if I go to one of my elevation views, I can see all of these reference planes that have been created. And so each of these lines is actually governing the size of some of the 3D solids of the modeled elements. And each of them is also being told what distance to be from each other or from a set point by a parameter. So notice if I hover over one of these, it says that it's a dimension, but that it's also a parameter. And what that means is that you will have the ability to enter values for that parameter. If it was just a dimension, as we see here, that's a value that you can't change dynamically in your project. You would have to come back to the original family and change that dimension here in the original family model. You'll notice here that we're starting off of a reference floor line, setting the location of the window. We have the sill height, we have the height of the window, we have some other parameters for trim, and then you always want a center line that we can dimension off of that in our project. And then let's go ahead and look at a 3D view. Rotate this so we can see what's happening. So each of these components now is built as a 3D solid, and they are all locked to those reference lines that we saw in the other view. So if I change the parameter for the width of the trim, the 3D solid is going to automatically update. Let's look at this inner frame. If I click on that solid, I can say edit extrusion, and you'll notice that the extrusion is created by making a sketch, a two-dimensional sketch, and then setting the dimensions for how far the extrusion extends and in which direction. I can also show my work plane, so you can see the plane on which it was sketched, which happens to be the midline of the window. And I think all of these solids have been sketched on that same reference plane. One other thing about the solids is that they all have a material and a category. So in this case, it's a solid. The subcategory is frame or mullion, and that makes it so that in Revit, if you ever want to do a query or if you want to set your frame or mullion material, you can essentially set the material by category instead of having to set the material for each window. Okay, let's cancel out of editing the solid. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, discard my changes. If I loved this family and I was ready to load it into my Revit model, I could click Load into Project. Returning now to our test model, our test project in Revit, I've removed all of the glazing that I previously placed here. So I'm going to the east elevation, and I want to add in a new level line. I've already done one of them for an upper story, but I want to add another level line down here between levels 2 and 3. So I'm going to my datum, level line, go ahead and set it at 8 feet above the nearest floor. Then I can click on the level name. I'm going to call it top of window 2, just because I can't have levels that have the same name, so this is the top of the windows for the second floor. Then I want to click on that and make sure to tell Revit that this is not a new story in the building. So I want to uncheck the building story box. And the other thing is that I don't want, in case your Revit automatically created a new floor plan for that level, I don't want that to happen, so I will select that view, that floor plan view, right mouse click, and click delete to get rid of that floor plan view. Okay, great. Next, let's switch to our south elevation. And I would like to have my 3D view and my south elevation visible at the same time. So go to your View ribbon, click Close Hidden Windows to get rid of any windows or views that you might have open besides this. And then I would like you to double click on your 3D view. So now I know that I have my south elevation and 3D view are the only two views that are open. And then I can click Tile Windows, and that puts the two views up side by side. I can zoom this a little bit. Zoom this a little bit. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and insert some windows. Returning to the Architecture ribbon, click the Window tab. You can load a family. I've already loaded the double hung with trim, which I recognize is a very weird choice for this office building. I'm going to choose the largest size or edit type to create a new size that you like. Here in my south elevation, I will go ahead and place the first window into that southern wall, and I can see here that that is indeed the southern wall. Now I would like to make sure that the top of that window is aligning with my new top of window datum line. So I'm using my Align tool. First I click the line that I want to align to, then I click the thing that I want to align. Okay, so that's worked. And next let me show you how to use the Array tool. I think the Array tool is a little bit tricky. The Array button, select my window. If I right mouse click, I can choose Finish Selection, or I can hit Enter or the space key. I get a new menu bar here. I want to group and associate. Let's start with 6. It's actually better to underestimate than overestimate. Here, if I say move to second, that means that whatever dimension I give, that's going to give me the spacing between the first and second component. So from here, let's say 8 feet. Great. And it looks like I have a lot of room for more. So here, instead of just saying 6, let's try 9. And even still, I have room for a little bit more. So here I can click the 9 again. Let's try 10. What's convenient about the array, especially when I have a lot of instances of something, is that I can edit this group. If I click on one of the elements, I get Edit Group. I can add additional windows or additional objects to the group. I can remove some of the windows, but I can also here change the type of window. Let's say double hung with trim turns out to just be too silly, so we're changing to casement. I say Finish, and you'll notice that all of the elements in that array group are updated. I can copy this entire group. If I select that group, copy it up to the 4th floor, make sure, great, now it's on level 4, and these two groups are now aligned. So again, if I edit one of the groups, change the window type, finish, and you'll notice that it updates all of the windows accordingly. Next, let's add a curtain wall to this lower level, but first I want to make my building rather ugly, I'm going to carve out a portion of the wall that will be glass and leave the rest of it solid. So I want to select the wall and click Edit Profile. Here in my south elevation, I'm going to give myself a temporary line. I want to make sure that that's in the center of my building, so I'm going to go to the Annotate tab, choose Aligned or Linear, and give myself a dimension. And as soon as I place the dimension, before I click anywhere else, if I hit this little EQ button, that will make sure that both sides of that are equal. Luckily, it seemed to have been in the right place from the beginning. Now I can delete this dimension. I don't want it to be a permanent constraint. I just needed it for a little while. Okay, I want to have another line that's at this level, the top of my windows. And then I would like to offset 20 feet to each side of the center. So using my offset command, offset 20 feet, copy, sure, 20 feet this way, 20 feet this way, and then I'm going to use my trim command. I can delete the line that I created in the center. I want to split this bottom element into two pieces so that I can trim the two edges and make one continuous profile. I'm going to go up here and use my split element command, click on that line once, then go to my trim command, click the two lines, click the two lines. Now you should be able to see that my new wall profile has this large hole in the center. I click the green check mark when I'm finished, and there's my new wall. Let's go ahead now and fill that in with a curtain wall. So I will add a new wall, choose the type curtain wall, and then I am just going to draw it in. I want to make sure it's set to level 1. I can set my top constraint to top of Windows level 2. The nice thing about a curtain wall is that you can actually put your mullions and grids in how you like, whereas if we chose the storefront, it automatically puts those in. Remember, you don't need this much detail for Sapphira, so I wouldn't spend a tremendous amount of time modeling this, but just let me show you quickly. If I choose the curtain grid, I can now just drag into my model, and let's go ahead and place it right in the center. And then I can do the same thing if I know that I want my doors to be up at 7 feet, or I can change that to 8 feet. And then let's add a couple more. Let's set our door width 3'6". They can be kind of big doors. And one more, 3'6". Okay, and now I've just created kind of my custom grids in those windows. I can also click the mullion button, which will convert those grid lines into a mullion. If I had a curtain wall panel family that was a door, I could change those panels now into doors. One last little tool I want to show you is that you can edit the profile of a wall. You can also just split a wall. So I could take this wall, use my split tool, split the wall. I could then select a portion of the wall and convert that to a curtain wall. And if I want to make that a little bit tidier, I could align the edges. And I think that's it for now. In the next video, we'll go over creating shading devices.